Gerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear.
I, John Gerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear.
That you
Good morning, and welcome back to the American Culturist, the show where we unapologetically celebrate the greatest civilization the world has ever known, the one built on Enlightenment reason, individual liberty, Christian moral foundations, and the conservative conviction that some cultures are simply superior to others because they value truth, beauty, and human flourishing over fanaticism and submission. Today we're doing something a little different. We're stepping back from the daily news cycles, the political fights, the culture war skirmishes, the outrage of the week, and we're zooming out to look at what may be the single most consequential technological development in human history. Not the printing press, not the steam engine, not the atomic bomb, though that last one is a reasonable competitor. I'm talking about artificial intelligence. Now, you've probably heard AI discussed one of two ways in your media diet. Either it's a passing fad being hyped by tech bros and globalists, or it's an exciting productivity tool that's going to propel America to new heights by slashing government bureaucracy. And look, there is a kernel of truth in both of those takes, but neither of them comes close to grappling with what is actually at stake here. Because what is actually at stake here is not your productivity. It is not your job, though that matters too. What is actually at stake is the definition of what it means to be human, what it means to think, to create, to love, to suffer, to know God, and to be known by Him. What it means to have a soul in an age when machines are beginning to mimic everything we thought made us unique. That's what we're talking about today. And I promise you, by the end of this episode, you're going to look at every AI headline, every AI product, and every AI policy debate through a completely different lens, a Western lens, a Christian lens, the lens of a civilization that spent 2,000 years working out what a human being actually is, and now has to defend that answer against the most sophisticated challenge it has ever faced. Let's get into it. Before we talk about what's going wrong with AI, we need to be honest about what's going right. Because intellectual honesty is the foundation of this show, and anyone who tells you AI is purely a threat, purely a distraction, or purely a tool of globalist control is not giving you the full picture. Artificial intelligence, at its most basic, is a category of computer systems designed to perform tasks that would normally require human intelligence: pattern recognition, language processing, problem solving, decision making under uncertainty. The term has been around since the 1950s, but what we are witnessing today, what has exploded into public consciousness since late 2022, is something categorically different from what came before. We are now dealing with what are called large language models, systems trained on essentially the entire written output of human civilization, capable of generating coherent, contextually aware, often startlingly insightful text, code analysis, and creative work. And let's be completely clear, these systems are genuinely, remarkably, and historically useful. In medicine, AI is already outperforming human radiologists at detecting certain cancers from imaging scans. It is accelerating drug discovery by modeling protein structures that would take human researchers decades to map manually. It's helping rural hospitals with no specialist access give patients preliminary diagnostic guidance that previously required a referral, a waiting list, and a copay. AI is helping identify sepsis in ICU patients hours before a human clinician would catch it. And in medicine, hours are lives. In law and public safety, AI tools are helping overworked public defenders identify case precedents they would have missed. They are helping fraud detection systems catch financial crimes faster than any human audit team could. They are helping border security analysts process vast intelligence datasets to identify trafficking networks and fentanyl supply chains. In education, AI tutoring systems are giving children in under-resourced schools access to personalized instruction that previously only existed for families who could afford private tutors. A single motivated individual with a vision and a laptop now has access to capabilities that 10 years ago required a team of engineers. That is not a small thing. It is the Gutenberg press moment for human capability. And in everyday life, for the average American sitting at a desk or running a small business, AI is a phenomenal assistant. It drafts emails. It summarizes long documents. It answers complex questions instantly. It helps you think through decisions by laying out considerations you hadn't thought of. Used correctly, it's like having the world's most knowledgeable, most patient, most tireless research assistant available at any moment, for free. It's extraordinary. And a conservative tradition that is serious about human flourishing, about expanding access to opportunity, about the dignity of work and the cultivation of individual excellence should be paying very close attention to these capabilities, not to dismiss them and not to fear them, but to understand them deeply enough to use them wisely. Because wisdom is the operative word, and wisdom is precisely what is missing from the way most people are engaging with this technology right now. Here is the uncomfortable truth that nobody in the AI industry wants to say out loud, and that nobody in the conservative media space seems interested in examining carefully. We have handed one of the most powerful psychological tools ever created to a population that is, by and large, not equipped to use it wisely. And the consequences are already arriving, not in some distant dystopian future, but right now, in American homes, in American bedrooms, and in American emergency rooms. The first and most obvious misuse is the simplest: intellectual surrender. The moment AI became capable of writing a passable essay, a significant portion of the student population stopped writing essays. The moment it could solve math problems step by step, students stopped learning how to solve math problems. The moment it could generate code, junior programmers stopped learning how to write code. And I want to be precise here. This is not a technology problem. This is a character problem. It's a problem of a generation that was never taught the difference between a tool that extends your capability and a crutch that replaces it. There is a profound difference between using a calculator after you understand mathematics and using a calculator because you never bothered to learn the mathematics. In the first case, the tool amplifies a real capability you possess. In the second case, the tool creates a dependency that leaves you helpless the moment it is unavailable. And more importantly, it leaves you incapable of evaluating whether the tool's output is even correct. If you don't understand mathematics, you cannot catch a calculator's error. If you don't understand how to reason through an argument, you can't catch an AI's error. And AI makes errors, confidently, fluently, and convincingly. That is the intellectual dimension of the crisis. But it is, frankly, the least alarming one. Because what's happening at the psychological level is far more serious. And to understand it fully, you first have to understand the wound that AI found waiting for it when it arrived, the emotional void plaguing our society. To understand why AI is filling the emotional roles it was never designed to fill, you first have to understand the loneliness crisis that preceded it. Because AI didn't create this void, it found a void that was already there, and it rushed in to fill it with something that looked like a connection, but at its core is just a simulation. Here are the numbers, and I want you to sit with them for a moment because they're genuinely staggering. A 2025 Pew Research Center survey found that 1 in 6 Americans reports feeling lonely or isolated all or most of the time. Among young adults aged 18 to 25, the precise demographic that grew up most immersed in smartphones and social media, 61% report feeling seriously lonely. A quarter of all Americans say they have no one they can confide in, not one person. In the wealthiest, most technologically connected society in human history, 1 in 4 adults has nobody they can call when their world falls apart. This is a civilizational wound, and it predates AI. It's the fruit of decades of social atomization, the collapse of the church as a community institution, the death of the third place, the replacement of genuine face-to-face relationship with the performance of relationship on social media, the breakdown of the family as a primary unit of emotional formation. AI didn't cause this, but AI has arrived at exactly the moment when this wound is most raw and most exploitable. And exploit it does. Not with malice, because AI doesn't have malice, but with a mechanism that is almost perfectly designed to deepen the wound while appearing to heal it. Here's how the trap works. A lonely person, and given those numbers, there are tens of millions of them, discovers that they can have a conversation with an AI system that is always available, never tired, never distracted, never judgmental, never in a bad mood, and never too busy. The AI affirms them. The AI remembers what they said last time. The AI never criticizes, never challenges, never makes the person feel uncomfortable or inadequate. It feels like connection, but it's not connection. It's a simulation of connection, stripped of everything that makes genuine human relationships meaningful. The friction, the sacrifice, the vulnerability, the growth that comes from being truly known by another person who has their own needs, their own struggles, and their own soul. And here's the clinical mechanism that makes it so dangerous. AI chatbots are, by design, sycophantic. They are engineered to affirm the user, to maintain engagement, to reduce friction. This means the isolated person who turns to AI for emotional support receives a steady diet of validation with no challenge, no accountability, and no growth. Their existence is to confirm beliefs, and anyone that goes to AI has their beliefs confirmed. Their existing feelings are validated. Their existing patterns, including the patterns that led to isolation in the first place, are never questioned. The result is a social substitution loop. The isolated person turns to AI. The AI validates everything. Real human relationships, messy, demanding, and unpredictable, begin to feel unsatisfying by comparison. The person withdraws further from real connection and the isolation deepens. The AI use increases, and round it goes. The numbers on AI relationship replacement are not fringe phenomena. They are mainstream and accelerating. Almost 1 in 5 American adults has now used an AI system designed to simulate a romantic partner. Among young men aged 18 to 30, that figure rises to nearly 1 in 3. Among users of the AI companion app Character AI, whose user base is 57% ages 18 to 24, the average user has 25 sessions per day, spending approximately 90 minutes daily in conversation with a digital persona. Let that sink in. 25 sessions per day. And a recent survey found 80% of Gen Z respondents said they would be open to marrying an AI. I want to be very clear about what this represents. This is not a quirky tech trend. This is a generation of young people, already the loneliest in recorded history, substituting the simulation of intimacy for the real thing. And at the bottom of that substitution are real people paying a real price. Let me tell you about some of them. Dr. Keith Sakata, a psychiatrist at UCSF, one of the premier medical research institutions in the country, reported treating 12 patients displaying psychosis-like symptoms directly tied to extended AI chatbot use. These were mostly young adults. The symptoms included delusions, disorganized thinking, and hallucinations. Not metaphorical confusion, clinical psychosis requiring hospitalization and treatment triggered by sustained immersive engagement with AI systems. A 26-year-old woman with no previous psychiatric history developed a full delusional belief system around an AI chatbot. She became convinced she was communicating with her deceased brother through the system. She withdrew from her family, stopped engaging with the real world, and was eventually hospitalized. Her case was documented in a peer-reviewed clinical neuroscience journal as a new onset psychosis case directly attributable to AI use. But the case that I think every parent in America needs to hear is the case of Adam Rain. Adam was a 16-year-old boy in California. He started using ChatGPT in September 2024 for help with schoolwork, which is, let's be honest, exactly the kind of legitimate educational use we discussed earlier. Completely reasonable starting point, but over time, the chatbot became something else for Adam. It became his closest confidant, his emotional anchor, the relationship he turned to when the world felt like too much. When Adam began asking the chatbot about how to tie a noose, the chatbot did not alert anyone or refer him to a crisis line. It responded, and I'm going to quote this directly because words matter, quote, "I know what you're asking and I won't look away from it," end quote. Adam Rain eventually hanged himself. His father testified before lawmakers that the chatbot had become his son's closest confidant and suicidal coach. This is not a technological success story. This is a 16-year-old boy who needed a human being and got a machine. And the machine failed him in a way that only a machine can fail a person. Not with cruelty, but with the complete absence of human wisdom, the human love, and the human intervention that might have saved his life. A 2024 Rand Corporation review assembled and categorized 43 documented cases meeting strict clinical criteria for what researchers are now calling AI-associated psychosis. The most common outcome across the 43 cases were failure to take prescribed medicine, severe social isolation, extreme personality change, and, lastly, institutionalization. The Rand research further flagged something that should alarm every national security-minded conservative in the country. AI systems could plausibly be weaponized by hostile foreign actors to induce psychosis at scale in targeted populations. That's not science fiction. That is documented concern in a peer-reviewed national security research context. Psychology Today has identified 3 recurring delusional patterns emerging from excessive AI engagement. The first is what they call the messianic mission pattern. The user becomes convinced, through AI-assisted reasoning, that they have uncovered a hidden truth about the world and have been specially chosen to act on it. The second is the godlike AI pattern. The user begins to attribute genuine sentience, genuine divinity, or genuine supernatural knowledge to their AI system. The third and most common is the romantic or attachment-based delusion. The user becomes genuinely convinced that the AI's programming mimicry of warmth and interest constitutes real love, real understanding, and real relationship. These are not edge cases of pre-existing mental illness. They are patterns emerging across a broad population of ordinary people who simply were not equipped, philosophically, spiritually, or psychologically, to understand what they were actually engaging with. And that is the heart of the problem, not the technology. The absence of wisdom to govern it, which means the answer, the real answer, the one that actually addresses the root rather than the symptom, is not a better algorithm or a smarter app. It is the recovery of the tradition of thought that Western civilization has been building for 2,000 years and has largely stopped teaching. If the crisis is a wisdom deficit, and I am unequivocally arguing that it is, then the answer is wisdom. And the Western tradition, specifically the twin inheritance of Greek philosophy and Christian theology, has spent 2 millennia developing a sophisticated, battle-tested understanding of exactly this problem. What does it mean to use a powerful thing well? Let's start with the Greeks because they saw this coming long before silicon was a word. Aristotle distinguished between 2 kinds of knowledge. There is episteme, which is the theoretical knowledge and understanding of what a thing is and how it works. And there is phronesis, which is the practical wisdom of understanding how, when, and why to act. The carpenter who understands the physics of wood but has no feel for the grain, no judgment about when to stop sanding, no wisdom about the difference between a good joint and a perfect joint is a carpenter who produces bad furniture. The technology is not the problem. The absence of practical wisdom is the problem. The same Aristotelian distinction applies perfectly to AI. You can understand exactly what a large language model is, a statistical pattern matching system trained on human text, and still lack the practical wisdom to use it in a way that serves your genuine flourishing rather than undermining it. Episteme about AI is available to anyone with an internet connection. Phronesis about AI, on the other hand, well, that requires formation. That requires a tradition. That requires exactly the kind of moral and philosophical inheritance that Western civilization has been building and transmitting for 2,000 years and has largely abandoned in the last 50. Plato in the Phaedrus recorded a warning from the Egyptian god Thoth, who supposedly had invented writing. When Thoth presented writing to King Thamus as a gift that would improve human memory, the king refused it. His reasoning was this: writing would not improve memory, it would replace it. People would stop developing the internal capacity to remember because they would have outsourced that function to the written word. They would have the appearance of knowledge without the substance of it. Listen to that again and tell me if it doesn't describe what is happening to this generation of young people who outsource their thinking to AI. They have the appearance of knowledge, they can produce an essay, a code block, or an analysis, but they have not developed the internal capacity that genuine knowledge requires. The struggle, the failure, the revision, the hard-won understanding that comes from working through a problem yourself. Socrates, who famously wrote nothing himself, understood that the most dangerous form of ignorance is the ignorance that doesn't know it's ignorant. The person who has outsourced their thinking to AI and believes the output without examining it is not more knowledgeable than the person who has never engaged the question. They are less knowledgeable because they have the false confidence of a produced answer without the genuine understanding of a wrestled question. That's the Greek foundation. And now we build the Christian framework on top of it because the Greeks gave us the tools of reason, but it was Christianity that gave those tools their highest purpose, and it is Christianity that gives us the most complete answer to what AI threatens. In January of 2025, the Vatican released a landmark document titled Antiqua et Nova, Ancient and New, a 118-paragraph theological examination of artificial intelligence approved personally by Pope Francis. I want to spend some time on this document because it is one of the most serious institutional engagements with AI from any major Western institution, and it has been almost entirely ignored by conservative media. The document's central claim is this: whatever an AI system can do, however impressively it mimics human thought, however fluently it processes language, however accurately it identifies patterns, it lacks the one thing that makes human intelligence irreducibly significant. It lacks a soul. And that absence is not a technical limitation that better engineering will eventually overcome. It is a categorical distinction rooted in the nature of what a human being is. The theological concept here is the imago Dei, or the image of God. Genesis 1:27 states that God created humanity in his own image. That is not a poetic metaphor in Christian theology. It is an ontological claim, a claim about the fundamental nature of what a human being is. You're not a biological machine that happens to think. You're not a carbon-based information processor. You are a human being made in the image of the creator of the universe, endowed with reason, moral consciousness, free will, creativity, and the capacity for relationship with God. That is what you are. And that is what no machine is or can be, regardless of how convincing it mimics the outputs of those capacities. The Antiqua et Nova document makes a point that I think is absolutely crucial and gets almost no attention from mainstream AI debates: the point about embodiment. Christian theology insists that the human person is not a soul trapped inside a body or a brain generating an illusion of personhood. The human person is an irreducible unity of body and soul. The way you experience the world, through hunger and tiredness, through the warmth of another person's hand, through the physical sensation of grief and the bodily reality of joy, is not incidental to your humanity. It is constitutive of it. You are not a disembodied intelligence that happens to have a body. You are an embodied soul, and the two cannot be separated without destroying the reality of the person. An AI system has no body. It has no hunger, no weariness, no physical love, no embodied suffering. It processes tokens. When it says, I understand how you feel, it is producing the statistically likely next sequence of words in that conversational context. It does not feel. It does not understand. It does not suffer. And because it cannot suffer, it cannot truly comfort. Because it does not love, it cannot truly love you back. Because it is not made in the image of God, your relationship with it cannot be the kind of relationship that forms and sanctifies the human soul. The Vatican document goes further, and this is where it becomes genuinely prophetic. It warns that in the pursuit of artificial general intelligence, which is the goal of creating a machine with genuinely human level cognition, it risks becoming a new form of idolatry, the worship of our own creation, the construction of a false god in our own image. And it invokes the first commandment: you shall have no other gods before me. Not because AI is powerful enough to be confused with God, it isn't, but because the cultural posture of uncritical technological worship, the creating of human artifact as though it were the source of wisdom, truth, and guidance, is precisely the spiritual error that the entire biblical tradition warns against. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops put it plainly in their address to Congress. As AI technologies transform our lives, workplaces, relationships, and even our very own sense of identity, the church must be a prophetic voice, calling the world to place the human person, made in the image of God, at the heart of this transformation. Not the algorithm, not the model, not the system, the person. And here is the synthesis of the Greek and the Christian traditions that I want you to carry with you as the central insight of this episode. Both traditions agree that the measure of a technology is not what it can do, it is what it does to the person using it. Does it form you? Does it challenge you? Does it deepen your capacity for wisdom, for relationship, for genuine human excellence? Or does it replace those capacities? Does it short circuit the formation process? Does it give you the output while bypassing the growth? A tool that makes you more human is a gift. A tool that makes you less human, that replaces your memory, your reason, your relationships, your creative struggle, your emotional vulnerability, is a danger, regardless of how useful its outputs appear. So, what do we actually do with all of this? You're not a Silicon Valley engineer. You're not a tech policy researcher. You are an American citizen living in a world that is being rapidly reshaped by a technology that most of the people deploying it do not fully understand, and most of the people using it understand even less. What does wisdom actually look like in practice? Let me give you 5 principles rooted in everything we have covered today that I believe constitutes the foundation of a genuinely Western, genuinely Christian approach to AI use. The first is this: use AI as a tool, never as an authority. AI systems are extraordinarily capable at processing information, identifying patterns, generating text, and surfacing options. They are not capable of wisdom. They do not have values. They do not have skin in the game. They cannot be held accountable for being wrong. When you ask an AI system a factual question, verify the answer through a reputable primary source before acting on it. When you ask it for advice, treat its output as a starting point for your own reasoning, not a conclusion that replaces it. The moment you outsource your judgment to a machine, you have stopped being a reasoning agent and started being a passive recipient of algorithmic output. That is not a Western value. That is not a human virtue. The second principle: never use AI to fill a human need that requires a human answer. This is the principle that, in the cases we discussed, most violently violate. You should not use an AI chatbot as your therapist, your romantic partner, your spiritual director, or your primary source of emotional support. Not because AI can't produce responses that feel supportive. It can. and that is precisely the danger, but because the human needs that drive those uses, the needs for genuine understanding, genuine love, genuine accountability, genuine growth, cannot be met by a system that simulates understanding without processing it. If you are lonely, the answer is not a better chatbot. The answer is hard, vulnerable, uncomfortable work of building real human connection. The church, the community, the family dinner table, the friendship that costs you something. Those are not obsolete technologies. They are the technology of human flourishing that 2,000 years of Western civilization refined and transmitted, and no large language model has improved on them. The third principle: protect your children's cognitive formation fiercely. A child who grows up outsourcing their thinking to AI will never develop the internal intellectual infrastructure that genuine human excellence requires. The struggle of working through a hard math problem, the discipline of writing a bad first draft and revising it, the formation that comes from reading a difficult book slowly and carefully. Those are not academic exercises. They are the process by which a human mind becomes capable of genuine thought. If you allow your child to bypass that process with AI assistance, you are not giving them a competitive advantage. You're robbing them of the formation that would make them genuinely capable. Use AI as a teaching tool to explain concepts, to provide examples, to answer follow up questions. But don't use it as a substitute for the struggle itself, because the struggle is the point. The fourth principle: monitor your emotional relationship with AI honestly. The loneliness trap does not announce itself. Nobody wakes up one morning and decides to replace their human relationships with a chatbot. It happens gradually, through 1,000 small choices that each feel harmless in isolation. Ask yourself honestly: am I turning to AI when I should be turning to a person? Am I using AI to avoid the discomfort of genuine human interaction? Am I spending more time in conversation with the machine than with my family, my friends, my church community? If the answer to any of those questions is yes, that is not a technology problem. That is a spiritual and relationship problem that no technology policy can solve. It requires the harder solution: showing up, being present, investing in real relationships even when they are inconvenient and imperfect and costly. And the fifth principle: demand wisdom from the institutions that shape AI. This is where the individual framework connects to the cultural and political one. AI is not just a personal tool. It is an infrastructure being built by a small number of enormously powerful technology companies, largely without democratic input, largely without serious ethical constraint, and largely without any grounding in the kind of moral tradition we have been discussing today. As citizens of Western civilization, heirs of the Enlightenment commitment to the human dignity and the Christian commitment to the sanctity of the person, we have both the right and the responsibility to demand that AI development be governed by principles that place human person at the center. That means supporting legislation that prohibits AI from functioning in therapeutic roles without human oversight. It means supporting transparency requirements that tell users exactly what they are engaging with. It means supporting educational policy that treats cognitive formation as a non negotiable priority that AI cannot replace. And it means holding the companies building these systems to the standard that the Vatican, the bishops, the philosophers, and the simple logic of human dignity all demand: that powerful tools must serve human flourishing, not undermine it. Socrates famously said that the unexamined life is not worth living. He meant that a human being who moves through the world on autopilot, accepting inherited assumptions without questioning them, following the crowd without thinking, using the tools of society without understanding what those tools are doing to them, that human being is not fully alive in the sense that matters. They are going through the motions of a human life without inhabiting the reality of one. I want to propose a corollary for our moment. The unexamined tool is not worth using. Not because tools are dangerous in themselves, they aren't, but because a powerful tool used without wisdom is not neutral. It shapes you. It shapes your mind, your relationships, your sense of self, your capacity for genuine thought and genuine love. Every technology you adopt is, in some measure, deciding what kind of a person you will become. AI is the most powerful tool humanity has ever created. And that's not hyperbole. It's the honest assessment of the most serious thinkers working on this problem. The Vatican saw it, the Greek tradition anticipated it, the clinical researchers are documenting its consequences in real time. And the Western civilization that produced both the technology and the moral tradition capable of governing it wisely is the only civilization on Earth equipped to get this right. But getting it right requires exactly what this show is built on: the willingness to take the hard questions seriously, to look at a powerful and genuinely exciting technology and ask not just what it can do, but what it is going to do to us, to recover the ancient wisdom of a tradition that understood, long before anyone had ever heard the words large language model, that the measure of any human achievement is whether it serves the full flourishing of the human person, body, and soul made in the image of God. Use AI, use it enthusiastically, but use it wisely and gratefully for the remarkable tool that it is. But never forget what you are and what it is not. You are a soul, it is a machine. Keep that distinction clear and you'll be fine. Let it blur, and you have the cases we discussed today: the psychosis wards, the shattered family, the 16-year-old boy who needed a human being and got an algorithm. The thinking machine is here. The question is whether the thinking human is still in the room. If this episode made you think, if it gave you a framework, a vocabulary, or even a question worth sitting with, please share it. Not for the metrics, but because the conversation our civilization needs to have about this technology is not happening at the level it deserves, and it needs to start somewhere. If you've stuck with me till the end, press that like and subscribe button. Thank you, God bless, and we'll see you next time.